Hey guys, tonight we slip into the flickering candlelight of a 13th century monastery, where the air smells of old parchment and wax, and the world's about to get a little clearer, literally. Picture yourself in Pisa, Italy, surrounded by stone walls that hum with the soft chants of monks. You're perched on a wooden stool, squinting at a manuscript, the ink blurring into a smudgy mess because, let's be real, your eyes are staging a full-on rebellion. Back then, if your vision started to fade, you were basically doomed to a life of fuzzy texts and squinting headaches. Good luck deciphering that Latin prayer without a miracle. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment with your location and local time. I'm curious where you're drifting off from tonight. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're in a dimly lit scriptorium, the kind of place where silence is louder than the occasional cough or rustle of a robe. The monks around you are hunched over their desks, their fingers stained with ink, their eyes straining against the limits of human biology. It's the late 1200s, and aging scholars are hitting a wall. Farsightedness, or presbyopia, is turning their once sharp vision into a frustrating haze. Reading, copying manuscripts, praying over tiny script, it's all becoming a chore. You can almost feel the weight of their exhaustion, the way their temples throb after hours of trying to make out a single line. Glasses don't exist yet, and without them, these men are losing their connection to the written word, which in a monastery is basically their entire world. Imagine being a scholar who spent decades mastering theology, only to find your eyes betraying you faster than a sneaky novice sneaking extra bread. Here's a mainstream fact to anchor us. The first recorded use of glasses pops up in Italy around the late 13th century, with monks and scholars like Roger Bacon tinkering with ways to fix their failing sight. Bacon, a brainy Franciscan, had been musing about lenses and optics, suggesting that curved glass could amplify light. But it's not just about the big names. There's a quirky tidbit for you. Some monks tried holding polished gemstones, think emeralds or quartz, over texts to magnify them, like makeshift reading stones. Sounds fancy, right? Except they were heavy, impractical, and probably made you look like you were auditioning for a wizard role in a medieval play. Historians still argue whether these reading stones were a direct ancestor of glasses or just a desperate stopgap. Either way, you're feeling the monks struggle as they squint and sigh, their fingers tracing lines they can barely see. You wander through the monastery's chilly halls, the stone floor cold under your sandals. The scent of damp wool and burning tallow candles fills the air, and you notice how the monks adapt, or don't. Some lean so close to their parchments their noses practically smudge the ink. Others beg younger monks to read aloud, which, let's be honest, is a bit like asking your little brother to do your homework. Humiliating and not always accurate. You can't help but chuckle at the image of a grumpy old monk waving a gemstone over a Bible, muttering about how, back in my day, my eyes worked fine. It's a rough time to be a scholar, and the stakes are high. Manuscripts are rare, hand-copied treasures, and if you can't read them, you're cut off from knowledge, from God, from purpose. But there's a glimmer of hope in Pisa, and it's not just the candlelight. You hear whispers about a monk named Alessandro della Spina, a guy with a knack for tinkering and a pair of eyes that are probably as tired as yours feel right now. He's not the only one thinking about vision. Scholars across Italy are starting to play with glass, bending light in ways that feel almost magical. You're standing at the edge of a revolution, one that's going to make the world sharper for generations. For now, though, you're just a monk, squinting in the dark, wondering if there's a better way. Spoiler, there is, but you're not quite there yet. Let's keep wandering these halls, seeing what Alessandro's up to, because something tells me he's about to change the game.
You're back in the Pisa monastery, but now you're trailing a monk who's got a spark in his eye.
Well, as much spark as a guy with blurry vision can muster. Alessandro della Spina is your man. A wiry figure shuffling through the cloister with a satchel of odd bits. Glass shards, polished stones, maybe a stray quill or two. The air's thick with the scent of dust and old vellum, and you can hear the faint scratch of pens from the scriptorium nearby. Alessandro's not just another monk praying and copying texts, he's a tinkerer, a guy who can't resist poking at the world to see how it works. You're watching him now, hunched over a wooden table in a corner, his fingers fiddling with a piece of convex glass that catches the candlelight like a tiny, mischievous star. This is where the magic starts, where the idea of glasses begins to flicker into existence. Alessandro's messing with lenses, those curved bits of glass that bend light in ways that make your head hurt just thinking about it. You lean closer, noticing how the glass distorts the grain of the table, making it look larger, warped, almost alive. He's not inventing glass itself. Oh no, that's been around forever, from Roman goblets to church windows. But he's doing something new. He's figuring out that a convex lens, thicker in the middle, can make small things look big. You can almost hear his brain whirring as he holds the glass over a scrap of parchment, the tiny script suddenly swelling into something readable. It's like he's cracked a code and you're right there, feeling the thrill of discovery, even if it smells faintly of burnt wax and desperation. Here's the mainstream fact. Alessandro della Spina is one of the key figures credited with developing early eyeglasses in late 13th century Italy, alongside folks like Roger Bacon, who wrote about magnifying lenses years earlier. But Alessandro's the hands-on guy, the one turning theory into something you can hold. And for the quirky tidbit, some stories claim he wasn't above a bit of showboating. Apparently, he loved showing off his glass contraptions to anyone who'd look, like a medieval tech bro with a new gadget. Historians still argue whether Alessandro was the true inventor or just the guy who popularized someone else's idea, maybe even stole a bit of credit from another monk. Either way, you're watching him tinker, and it's clear he's onto something big. You hover over his shoulder as he polishes another lens, muttering to himself, probably cursing his sore eyes or the dim light. The monastery is quiet, but you can sense the weight of what's happening. This isn't just about one monk's hobby, it's about saving the written word for people whose eyes are giving up. You chuckle at the thought of Alessandro trying to explain optics to his fellow monks, who probably just nod and go back to their prayers. Sure, Alessandro, your shiny rock makes words bigger. Now pass the bread. But he's persistent, stacking lenses, testing them against scraps of text, maybe even squinting at his own reflection in the glass and wondering why he looks so tired. The process isn't glamorous. You notice the tools, crude, wooden, probably borrowed from the carpenter's shed. The glass isn't perfect either. It's full of bubbles and flaws, like it was sneezed out by a furnace. Yet every time Alessandro holds a lens just right, the world shifts. You can imagine him grinning, maybe even letting out a little "ha" when the script on his parchment snaps into focus. It's not just about reading anymore, it's about possibility. You're starting to see why this matters, why this little piece of glass could change everything. But there's a long way to go before these lenses become actual glasses. For now, you're stuck in this drafty corner, watching Alessandro fumble with his prototypes, probably wondering if he's a genius or just a guy with too much time on his hands. Either way, you're hooked, ready to see what he does next. You're still in Alessandro della Spina's corner of the piece of monastery, where the air is a mix of musty parchment and the faint tang of wood shavings. The candlelight flickers, casting shadows that dance across the stone walls, and you're watching Alessandro move from tinkering with loose lenses to something more ambitious. He's not just holding glass over texts anymore. He's trying to make it practical, something you can wear, something that doesn't require you to look like you're inspecting a bug under a rock. You see him at his table, surrounded by scraps of wood, twine, and those precious convex lenses. His fingers fumbling as he tries to cobble together what will become the first true eyeglasses. It's messy, it's awkward, and honestly, it's kind of adorable. like watching your uncle try to fix a broken chair with duct tape and hope. Alessandro's got a vision, pun intended, and you're right there as he starts shaping wooden frames. These aren't the sleek specs you're used to. They're clunky, rough-hewn things that look like they belong in a carpenter's reject pile. You can almost feel the splinters waiting to happen as he carves two small circles to hold the lenses, connecting them with a strip of wood that's supposed to sit on your nose. It's not exactly high fashion. Imagine wearing a miniature fence on your face, but it's a start. You watch him slide a lens into one of the frames, securing it with twine, and then hold the contraption up to his eyes. The moment he peers through, you swear you see his face light up like he's just discovered coffee in a world of decaf. Here's the mainstream fact. The earliest eyeglasses, developed in late 13th century Italy, were simple convex lenses set in wooden or bone frames, designed to help far-sighted folks read. They were a game changer for monks like Alessandro, who needed to keep churning out manuscripts. And the quirky tidbit? These first glasses didn't have temples, the bits that hook over your ears, so they either perched precariously on your nose, or you had to hold them like opera glasses, which probably made you look like you were posing for a medieval influencer selfie. Historians still argue whether Alessandro crafted the first wearable frames himself or built on someone else's experiments, maybe even a rival monk's. Credit's tricky in a world where nobody's posting patents on medieval X. You lean in as Alessandro tests his prototype, squinting at a prayer book. The lenses work, but the frame keeps slipping, and you can't help but chuckle at his frustrated muttering, probably something about how saints never had to deal with his nonsense. He adjusts the wood, tightens the twine, and tries again. It's trial and error, and you're feeling the weight of each failure, the way his shoulders slump when the lenses wobble or the frame pinches his nose. But there's joy in it too, the kind of quiet thrill that comes from making something new. You notice his scratches on his fingers, the sawdust clinging to his robe, and you realize this isn't just about fixing his eyes, it's about proving it can be done. The monastery's still humming with its usual rhythm, chants, footsteps, the occasional clink of a wine goblet. But Alessandro's world is narrowing to this one task. You can imagine him staying up late, ignoring the bell for Vespers, just to shave another sliver off the frame or polish a lens cleaner. It's not perfect yet. These early glasses are heavy, foggy, and about as uncomfortable as sitting on a stone bench for hours. But when he finally gets the frame to stay put long enough to read a full line without squinting, you feel it too, a little spark of triumph. You're starting to see the shape of the future, one where blurry texts don't mean the end of a scholar's life. For now, though, you're just here, watching Alessandro wrestle with wood and glass, probably wondering if his nose will ever forgive him. You're still lingering in the Pisa monastery, the air heavy with the scent of old books and the faint smoke of tallow candles. The scriptorium's alive now, buzzing with a quiet energy you didn't expect. Word's getting out about Alessandro della Spina's weird little invention, those clunky wooden frames holding lenses that make blurry texts snap into focus. You're watching monks gather around his table, their robes brushing the stone floor, their faces a mix of curiosity and skepticism. It's like they're sizing up a newfangled gadget, half expecting it to be witchcraft or worse, a waste of time. You can almost hear their thoughts. Great, Alessandro's playing with glass again. Hope he doesn't burn the monastery down. But something's shifting, and you're right in the middle of it, feeling the hum of excitement as these early eyeglasses start to make waves. Alessandro's not keeping his creation under wraps. Remember that quirky tidbit about him being a bit of a showboat? He's showing off his prototypes to anyone who will look, holding them up like a proud parent displaying a kid's art project. You see a younger monk, maybe 20, try on a pair, his eyes widening as he reads a line from a psalter without squinting for the first time in years. The room's abuzz with murmurs, some in awe, others muttering about how they managed just fine without these contraptions. You chuckle at the thought of a grumpy old monk refusing to try them, insisting his blurry vision is God's will. Yeah, sure, buddy. Tell that to the headache you've got from straining over that manuscript. Here's the mainstream fact. By the late 13th century, Italian monks and scholars were using these early glasses, called reading glasses or occhiali, to combat farsightedness, making them indispensable in monasteries where copying texts was a sacred duty. And the quirky detail? Some monks decorated their frames with carved crosses or tiny saints, turning their glasses into mini devotional objects like wearing a prayer on your face. Historians still argue whether Alessandro was the sole genius behind this, or if other monks in nearby monasteries were tinkering with similar ideas at the same time. In a world without email or ex-posts, it's hard to know who got there first. You wander among the desks, watching monks pass the glasses around like they're handling a holy relic. One guy, a scribe with ink-stained fingers, holds the lenses so close he nearly pokes his eye out, and you stifle a laugh. Clumsy, but relatable. The frames are still rough, sliding off noses or pinching like an angry crab, but when they work, it's magic. You see an older monk, his beard grayer than the stone walls, read a passage aloud, his voice steady for the first time in years. It's not just about reading. It's about dignity, about not being sidelined by aging eyes. You can feel the relief in the room, the way these lenses are giving these men their purpose back. But it's not all smooth sailing. You notice the whispers of doubt. Some monks think the glasses are a crutch, a sign of weakness. Others worry about the cost. Glass isn't cheap, and good lenses are rarer than a sunny day in February. You catch Alessandro adjusting a frame for a colleague, his hand steady but his brow furrowed, probably wondering how to make these things less like a woodworking accident waiting to happen. The monastery is a microcosm of what's coming: excitement, resistance, and the slow creep of change. You're starting to see how these glasses aren't just a tool, they're a spark, one that's about to light up more than just this drafty scriptorium. But for now, you're here, soaking in the chatter, the clink of lenses, and the faint hope that maybe, just maybe, the world's about to get a little clearer.
You step out of the monastery's stone walls, leaving behind the flicker of candles and the hum of monkish debates. Now you're in the bustling streets of Pisa, where the Arno River glints under the late 13th century sun, and the air smells of fresh bread, leather, and a hint of fish from the market stalls. Alessandro's glasses, those clunky lens-holding frames, aren't just a monastery secret anymore. They're starting to spread, like a catchy tune you can't unhear. You're walking alongside merchants, scribes, and even a few curious nobles, all hearing whispers of this new invention that makes blurry words clear. It's like the whole city's squinting at the future, and you're here to see how these glasses move beyond the cloister, changing lives one pair of eyes at a time. You follow a merchant, let's call him Giovanni, who's got a ledger thicker than a monk's Bible and eyes that are starting to betray him. He's heard about Alessandro's creation through a friend of a friend. Medieval gossip travels faster than you'd think. You watch him barter for a pair of these early glasses, probably trading a sack of grain or a bolt of cloth for the privilege. The frames are still rough, tied together with twine, but when Giovanni slips them on, you see his face light up like he's just found a gold coin in his pocket. He's reading his ledger without hunching over like a vulture, and you can't help but grin. Imagine the relief of not needing to bribe a clerk to read your numbers aloud. Here's the mainstream fact. By the early 14th century, eyeglasses were spreading from Italian monasteries to urban centers like Pisa and Florence, becoming tools for merchants, notaries, and anyone else who needed to read fine print. And the quirky tidbit? Some early adopters wore their glasses as a status symbol, flashing them like a medieval Rolex, even if their eyes were fine, because nothing says I'm important like sporting cutting-edge tech. Historians still argue whether the spread was driven by practical need or if vanity played a bigger role than we think, especially among the wealthy who could afford the pricey lenses. You trail Giovanni through the market, where vendors hawk everything from spices to wool. He's not the only one sporting these newfangled glasses. You spot a notary adjusting a pair while scribbling a contract, his nose no longer practically kissing the parchment. There's a buzz in the air, a mix of excitement and suspicion. Some folks think the glasses are a fad, like that time everyone got obsessed with pointed shoes. You chuckle at the thought of a merchant trying to look cool in his wobbly frames, only to have them fall off mid-haggle. But the impact is real. These glasses are letting people work longer, read more, and stay sharp in a world where literacy is power. You pause by a stall where a glassmaker is showing off his wares. Crude lenses, some clearer than others, but all expensive. You overhear a conversation about how the best glass comes from Venice, where they're starting to figure out how to make it less bubbly and warped. It's not just Pisa catching the glasses bug. Florence, Venice, even cities across the Alps are starting to hear about this invention. You can feel the ripple effect, the way a monk's tinkerings are reaching people who've never set foot in a monastery. It's not perfect. Lenses are still only convex, great for farsightedness, but useless for nearsighted folks like that kid squinting at a sign across the square. You imagine him muttering, "Great, another invention that doesn't help me." But for those it does help, it's a lifeline, keeping them in the game in a world that doesn't slow down for blurry eyes. You're standing at the edge of a new century, the 14th one, and the world feels sharper. Not just because of the crisp Pisa air carrying hints of olive oil and sea salt, but because Alessandro della Spina's little invention is rewriting what it means to see. You're no longer tied to the monastery or even Pisa's crowded markets. You're gazing across Europe, where glasses are becoming more than a monk's quirky side project. From Florence's bustling workshops to the chilly scriptoria of Paris, these lens-framed wonders are reshaping how people work, think, and live. You're here to soak in the legacy of glasses, how they're unlocking knowledge and stitching themselves into the fabric of society, one pair of tired eyes at a time. Picture yourself in Florence Library, where a scholar's poring over a rare Aristotle text, his glasses perched like a tiny wooden bridge on his nose. Without them, he'd be lost. His career as good as over once his eyes started failing. Now, he's scribbling notes, arguing with colleagues, and probably complaining about how the lenses fog up when he leans too close to his candle. You smile at the thought. Medieval problems, modern vibes. Glasses aren't just tools. They're keeping minds alive, letting people stay connected to ideas when biology tries to pull the plug. You can feel the weight of this shift, how it's not just about reading, but about power, access, and who gets to shape the future. Here's the mainstream fact. By the 14th century, eyeglasses were a key tool for scholars, merchants, and clergy across Europe, credited with extending careers and boosting literacy in a manuscript-heavy world. And the quirky tidbit? Some folks believed glasses had near mystical powers, like they could restore youth to aging eyes. Talk about medieval marketing hype. Historians still argue whether glasses directly fueled the Renaissance by keeping scholars active longer, or if they were just one piece of a bigger cultural puzzle. Either way, you're seeing their impact unfold, and it's bigger than anyone in that Pisa monastery could have dreamed. You drift to a Venetian glassmaker's shop, where the air's hot and shimmering with the glow of a furnace. These guys are the rock stars of lens making now, crafting clearer, less bubbly glass that makes Alessandro's early prototypes look like foggy pond water. You watch a craftsman shape a lens, his hands steady as he grinds it against a stone, and you realize this isn't just about monks anymore. Merchants are using glasses to check contracts, jewelers to inspect gems, even artists to sketch finer details. You chuckle at the image of a painter squinting through his specs, muttering about how his apprentice's lines are still too wobbly. Glasses don't fix everything, apparently. But it's not all rosy. You notice the cost. Lenses are still a luxury, like owning a horse or a fancy cloak. Only the wealthy or well-connected can afford a decent pair, leaving poorer folks to squint or rely on younger eyes to read for them. You imagine a street vendor enviously eyeing a notary's glasses, thinking, "Must be nice to see your own prices." Yet the demand's growing, and with it, the craft. Guilds are forming, rules are being set, and glasses are becoming a trade, not a miracle. You can feel the momentum, the way this invention is weaving itself into daily life, from the scholar's desk to the merchant's stall. As you linger, you think back to Alessandro, fiddling with his wooden frames in that drafty monastery. He probably never imagined his idea would reach this far, letting people see not just words, but possibilities. You're starting to drift, the sounds of Venice fading, the clink of glass, the murmur of haggling, the soft lap of canal water.
Your eyelids grow heavy, and the world softens, like a page blurring without those precious lenses. Let the glow of this story settle over you, a reminder that even the smallest ideas can light up the world. Close your eyes now, let the hum of history carry you, and rest in the quiet clarity of a vision reborn.
You're sinking deeper now, the sharp edges of the day melting away like wax under a candle's flame. The story of glasses lingers, soft and warm, a gentle reminder of human ingenuity tucked into the folds of time. Picture those early lenses, crude but miraculous, resting on a monk's nose, bringing the world back into focus. Let that image fade, replaced by a quiet sea of stars above a sleeping Pisa, the monastery dark and still. You're safe here, wrapped in the hum of history, where every small step, like a piece of curved glass, builds a brighter tomorrow. Breathe slow. Let your thoughts drift like leaves on a calm river, and feel the weight of the world slip away. The past has whispered its tale, and now it's time to rest, to dream, to let the night hold you close. Sleep well, knowing the world's a little clearer, because someone dared to see differently.